I'm really, really excited for this one, man. This is one that I have alluded to, I have referenced, I have talked about, I bring up all the time because I just adore the story so much that I can't help but compare something that is amazing to it. Because it is something that introduced me to so many cool ideas and concepts that were executed so masterfully that every time I think of something like that, I'm like, this series, this manga. It's a manga that means so much to me that I remember back whenever I was in college and I was talking about certain stories, I brought this one up. I brought it up because it truly is a magnificent tale that I believe someone who's not even into this medium can enjoy. It's one of those one-of-a-kind masterpieces, man. Naoki Urasawa's legendary 249-chapter masterpiece between 20th and 21st, and when you bring them together, it's GOAT Century Boys, man. Listen to me, dog. I'm a massive fan of Naoki Urasawa's works, and the main reason for that is because his storytelling style is very easy to recognize. Immediately, whenever you start reading an Urasawa work, you're like, I got it, because it's the similar type of beats in every single story. And yet, even though he has those similar beats in all of his tales, all of them are equally and as incredibly immersive as each and every single one of the others. And it's really, really hard to pull that off whenever you keep those same story beats and people expect those beats, and yet it's still as immersive as the first time that you experienced it. Why? Because Urasawa knows how to utilize different themes, concepts, and characters and still maintain the same type of beats, man. And it's very, very impressive. I absolutely adore Pluto, Billy Bat, and Monster for different reasons. Pluto, when it comes to how it tackles the whole Astro Boy and robotic concept and what it truly means to be human. Billy Bat with its incredible take on a storyteller and conspiracies from a certain era. One of my favorite chapters in all of manga is in that one. I absolutely adore Billy Bat. And then Monster. If there is a series that you want to see and want to experience what characters that truly feel human, and it's because of that they are very, very scary, it's Monster. The themes and the villain in that one right now, oh man, monster greatness, son. But today, we're going to be talking about my personal favorite Naoki Urasawa work, which is 20th Century Boys, man. 20th Century Boys is a series that I experienced in early 2015, and it helped me get through a lot, man. I read this one in 3 days. And every time I talk about binging something really quick, I always reference this one because I'm like, yo, I will never, ever, ever forget the initial binge experience for this manga right here, son. I was so addicted. The moment that I started the manga, it was just a 3-day spree of every single moment I had free time, I was reading this manga. I used to stay up all night reading this one. As a matter of fact, because I have 3 points right here. This is how excited I was to talk about this series, guys. I wrote notes. I was like, yo, I want to talk about this, this, and this. That's how hyped I was, son. Me writing notes, you know, they're like, yo, I usually come off from the top. And I was like, nah, man, I have to somehow structure this because I've been waiting so long to talk about 20th Century Boys. I was like, dog, I gotta write some notes. I gotta write some notes because if not, this is gonna be a 40-hour long video. So I gotta restrain myself. But listen to me, man. Going off of that, of being immersed and the whole addiction concept to this work, the first point that I wrote down for what it is that makes the series so special to me, I just wrote down the words "Hanged Hill." Now, if you have experienced 20th Century Boys, which I hope if you're watching this video that you have, and if you haven't, go read it and then come back and watch this video, man, because I don't want to spoil you on this legendary series. If that counts as an arc, the Hanged Hill portion, I mean, to me, that's tough. I think 2014, if we count that as an arc, that's in my favorite arcs of all time, without question. But I think if I have Hanged Hill by itself as an arc, like as a sub mini arc of the story, that is one of my favorite experiences that I've had in this medium. And the reason for that is because I do not get scared easily. At all. Like when it comes to games, which is why whenever things actually spook me, I find it to be something that is out of this world. Like, oh, yo, this is incredible. Like, I'll give you an example. PT, Silent Hill PT, whenever that was released as a PS4 demo, that was something that actually spooked me. But 20th Century Boys spooked me in a way that I had never really experienced up until that point in time. 20th Century Boys spooked me in paranoia. Because the way the story was told through the Hanged Hill concept, it wasn't trying to scare you through the means of like a jump scare. It wasn't trying to scare you through the means of a like somebody's building up this horror story. No. It just, that entire portion of the Hanged Hill really, really made me feel paranoid. I still remember how I felt that night. I was afraid to go to the bathroom. I'm a grown man, dog. I'm a grown man. I was like afraid to go to the bathroom because that's just how paranoid this stuff made me feel. And it really, whenever I finished 20th Century Boys and I went back and reread The Hanged Hill, it's one of those things that really require a reread to really put it into retrospect of how genius the Hanged Hill arc really is. Because you're so close to finding out who Friend truly is. And yet the entire situation, because they are kids, it elevates the whole scale up like tenfold. So you know that something crazy is about to go down in this place because it's been built up. So whenever you enter the Hanged Hill and they enter the house and they start going through it, there's just this sense of being uncomfortable. That's the best way that I can put it. Naoki Urasawa makes you feel absolutely uncomfortable. And it's through panel structure, it's by stretching out certain lines, stretching out certain portions of the story that just really make you say, okay, when is it going to hit? When is it going to hit? And because it never hits up until the very, very end, then it just keeps you really, really paranoid. And it's so... It really put into perspective certain other scenes from other series that I adore, and why it is that I adore those scenes and how they made me feel the way they did. One of them is One Piece's legendary Celestial Dragon Punch. I always thought about why is it that that scene means so much to me. It's because Oda built it up in a way that he really made me despise his character. To whenever the smackdown was laid, it was one of the most satisfying moments in history. Now, reverse that, put it in the realm of horror, and you get this. I mean, he legit makes you, he structured it to where he made you feel fear. But it was a different type of fear. It's paranoia, and that, to me, is whenever you truly start seeing and hearing things. Because it's one thing to be afraid of a concept, it's one thing to be afraid of something that might not exist, but when you're paranoid, when you're actually paranoid, because there's one thing is, oh, okay, sure, it's nothing about, no, bro. When you're paranoid, it might be because I read this like 2:30 in the morning, but when you're paranoid, that's whenever you start hearing and seeing stuff. And it's like Naoki Urasawa allowed you to step in the shoes of Kenji and all the other kids that were there, and really made you feel exactly what they felt. And that's really hard to pull off, man. And when I initially went through that, I was like, dog, I've never experienced something like this in my life. This is crazy. I'm spooked. I'm like, yo, manga doesn't spook me? What is this feeling? And it was absolutely amazing. I was like, dude, I don't know how he's doing this without music. Because for me, especially going through television production class through a majority of my life, whenever we created these scary type of horror films around Halloween season, it was always the music. The music is the most important part of making a scary film. And we watched so many movies like that to really get into the whole vibe of, okay, this is whenever a certain beat's gonna hit, this is when another beat's gonna hit, this is whenever you have the scare, this and all that stuff, right? And I think that's why I grew sort of like immune to scary movies and stuff like that, is because I learned all of the ins and outs of it while I was in school. But this one was different. I had never experienced anything like this before. And that's whenever I realized that you can take something that already exists and apply it into a different situation, and it will work, man. And it will work. This is true creativity to me, son. You take something that already exists and you mix it into what your ideal vision is. And because of that Hanged Hill portion of the story has always remained something that has stuck out to me over so many other things in that story. And I'm about to get into the two other things that really stuck out to me, but in terms of just single stretch and sequence of moments and arcs, or of chapters, Hanged Hill, man. That stuff has always stuck with me because it truly is absolutely genius. You are in that man's shoes. You are in the shoes of the kids as they're going to that house. It is truly spooky, and it is something that I'm so happy that I experienced, because it was able to bring back those same feelings that I had while experiencing something like that whenever I was younger. You know, and it was really, really cool. and I appreciate Urasawa for whatever majestic way he went about structuring those chapters, man. Amazing stuff. But then after that, man, I really want to talk about this because this kind of goes into the realm of fear, but it's not anymore. Like it's a concept that exists within the story, and I think that's why it's so fascinating to me. So y'all know that I'm a massive fan of villains, man. Normally, whenever a villain does something hype in any manga that I'm reading, I get really excited because it's always cool to see whenever an author allows their antagonists or their villains or groups or organizations really run free, because those are always the characters that you feel you can freely write the most, and you feel like they have the most freedom because there is no rules attached to them. They can really do whatever it is that they please if you allow them to do so, and they are the most unpredictable. And so that's why I always enjoy seeing whenever villains pop up and what it is they're going to do, because that's going to massively impact the story from then on out, especially the major villains. But what I had never seen before experiencing 20th Century Boys is a concept of a villain. A concept, an idea of a villain that has taken over the world. Because by the time 20th Century Boys begins, by the time that story begins, Friend has accomplished his goal. Friend has achieved world domination, both in 1999 and in 2014. Everyone in the world, or not everyone, but a majority of the world has become a part of this cult that is Friend. And it really changed everything, because I was like, dude, you know, normally you have this overpowering figure that everyone follows, that they recognize as leader of the universe, if they decide to take that route. Of like, you start off the series and this villain that is up, like I'll use Darth Vader as an example. Darth Vader exists, everyone knows who he is, he's just that dude. But in 20th Century Boys, they decided to use an idea of a cult, of the idea of Friend, as the main villain and the main antagonist of the story. And I had never, and I think since then, I'm trying to think of like other instances, but actually no, there is another one. There is another one that I feel like is executed on the same level, if not even better than Friend. But my point is, this is whenever I was introduced to the concept of having a villain that exists, and yet it's the idea and the concept that is truly terrifying. It could have been anyone behind that mask. It could have been anyone. I think that's truly the scary thing about Friend, is that Friend realistically could have ended up being any of them, and we would have been okay with it. Why? Because it is the idea. It's not Friend himself. I mean, of course, he's very charismatic, but the idea and how much everyone around the world truly does care about this individual is really what makes it scary. It really is, man. And I adore it, and I appreciate the creativity in creating a character like that, because the entire mystery of the first half of that story is trying to find out who Friend is. And while you're trying to figure out who Friend is, his whole presence becomes extremely terrifying and extremely powerful. Because when this character shows up, it's extreme adoration. It's like this individual that he feels superhuman, yet he feels very human, and he's very good at that. Urasawa is. That's normally how that's how he handled his villains in other stories. And I'm trying to not go into too much detail when it comes to the other stories, in case if y'all haven't experienced them yet. But he has done something, or he's done similar things with the other villains in his other stories, which is why he's so good at what he does. But in 20th Century Boys in particular, the concept and the idea of Friend and how it was executed both in the past and in the present, and I guess that leads into my third point. My third point is that I really adore how the mystery was unraveled from two different protagonists in two different time periods. When I first watched Godfather, the second one, I love the idea of telling a story through two different timelines. It's something that is really hard to pull off. Whenever it is pulled off, it creates two really awesome characters within the same universe. And the same thing can be said whenever, even if it is the same timeline, but it's two characters that are in two separate portions that end up meeting up there at the end. In 20th Century Boys, it was different. In 20th Century Boys, I experienced a story where the mystery and a concept was introduced in 1999, and then right before you get to the climax, and right before you get to the actual answer to said mystery, you skip forward, 15 years into the future. And I had never, ever seen anything like that. And it is so cool to me because it's like Urasawa is right there. He's right. I mean, the answers are right there. Stuff is popping off. It's going down. Reset. We reset. And it was so cool to me because it felt like everything amplified because you get to see the after effects of that very same incident. And then whenever you start seeing all the characters from back then, older, and you see how Kana interacts with them and how the world around them has changed, it really, now there's two things that you want to know. You want to know who Friend is, of course, but you also want to know what in the Flying Flappers happened on that day. And it's so cool because it's like adding on top of other things. And now you're telling the story in a completely different timeline with a completely different protagonist, which is already introduced in the beginning, which has that connection to Kenji. But now that Kenji's no longer the protagonist, he's no longer out of the picture, you still have, or he's no longer in the picture, but because of who Kana is to him, the very same theme and or presence that Kenji had is now carried on through Kana in a different type of way. And I really loved how that was pulled off. Because, like I said, up until that point in time, that was a concept very, very unique to me. Like, that's so cool to me, dude. Like, you have this mystery that starts off in one timeline, and then it's like the passing of the torch, like, yo, you solved this. 15 years later, we have this going down in 2014. And I think that's the reason why I love the 2014 arc so much. I'm a massive fan of time skips in anything, as you guys can see. This right here is arguably some of my favorite stuff in this entire medium, mainly due to the fact that I think it is the best I've ever seen a time skip being pulled off in that demographic. But what I love so much about this time skip, it just leads into my personal bias. I know it's my bias, but it's who I am, dog. I absolutely adore time skips because it allows us to see how the world has developed and how the characters have changed. We get to see new designs. We get to see how everything has changed around them. How they themselves have how their relationships have changed. How their little interactions changed. How have things have they become legends? Like there's certain instances where there's a time skip. And after the time skip, like you'll hear the legend of a certain character. Like this character is truly respected and recognized post time skip, and I always adore stuff like that, right? No matter what series it is. But in 20th Century Boys, it's done in such a way to where Kana, who knows these people existed, at one point in time, were pretty much kind of like deleted. Like, just deleted, and we have no idea what took place on that day. And there are so many things, like, people still discuss that event to this very day. And how Kana and everyone around is now off on this journey to find out what truly happened on that day, while also trying to figure out who exactly Friend is. And then on top of all that, the character development and the characterization of all the people that experienced that event and now have to carry that within their hearts into the future, and how they grow as individuals, how Kana grows from trying to from how she started in the beginning of 2014 up until the very end. And it's just, I just love it, man. I love the way that it was handled. I love the way it was executed. And I think it's the execution. I really do, because the ideas and the concepts, even though they are very unique, and or at least for me, they were very unique when I first got into them, they are things that you could find on like a website. Like, yo, idea or a cultural organization has taken over the world. The mystery for who the leader is takes place through two different time periods. You could literally summarize it just like that, but it's the execution. And the execution of the ideas, the concepts, and the themes within this very story that make it so special to me, man. And it's just so cool to me that the presence, the very idea of friend, is as powerful and as strong as it is all that time later. There was one scene that really, really stuck out to me from Friend's entire reign that really, truly made me realize how terrifying it is, because I could see it happening in our actual lives. And that is whenever Friend revives, the idea, the concept of Friend revives thanks to the Pope. When the Pope introduces Friend once more in front of everyone, yo, that junk had me spooked. I was so shook. I was like, bro, can you imagine something like that taking place? And this dude, this illusion of this idea, this illusion of this character, who already should be long gone, is now performing some sort of magic in front of everyone and making everyone believe this. And it's crazy because everybody was buying it. Why? Because he is Friend. All somebody needs to do is put on the mask and that suit, and they automatically have everyone in the palm of their hands. It's incredible. I mean, yo, it's terrifying. It's terrifying when you actually think about it, because if something like that were to actually happen, you could see it playing out in the same exact way. In the same exact way. And, I could go into the characters, into how much I truly loved the concept of friendship and the concept of childhood, because I think that whenever stories go back into the childhood of certain characters and shows us why it is that these characters became who they are, it's always really, really nice. But the way 20th Century Boys did it, and how it went to the past and then to the present and then to the future, and it would flip-flop. It would flip-flop to whenever they were all kids, making us think, which one of these is Friend? And it was very, very cool in the way they did it, because it takes like that same type of things, or that same type of idea that people really love from Stranger Things, of like really reminding you of your childhood and how it is that all of us acted. That's how 20th Century Boys is, man. The 20th Century Boys, whenever you're sitting there and you're seeing all of them as kids, it real deal, at least for me, it reminded me so much of how I was whenever I was a kid, and it really put everything in perspective. Like, dog, things really have changed ever since then. Like, the people I talked to back then, I mean, they always have a special place in my heart, but like, we've all gone our separate ways. But that stuff, those memories will always be special to you. Especially those moments of being outside and trolling and having this massive imagination. And then what happens whenever one of those kids has the imagination and actually decides to carry out that same exact plan, that organization that all of you as kids wanted to go ahead and take out. And it's because that idea and that concept came up that all those friends were able to come back together and have their reunion and get their lives all back together. I love 20th Century Boys, man. Yo, and then I'll never forget, one of the most hype moments I've ever had while reading manga, without question top 10, is the Yabuki Joe scene, bro. I mean, I just could not believe, whenever you hear the goo-la-la, yo, whenever you see the goo-la-la, yo, Yabuki Joe, I've always got the sunglasses. I was like, no, there's no way. There's no way. Amazing, amazing story. I cannot wait to sit down and reread this. I haven't given it a reread in a few years. I'm just going all based off of memory. But I just truly do adore this series. I cannot wait to sit down and dissect this series once more on my own. And I just remember how truly great of a story it really was, man, because it's one that's stuck with me for a long time. It's one that's left a really, really long-lasting impact on me, as you can tell, when it comes to just the way the story was told. And concepts I think that we can relate to in terms of certain things of how we were as kids and then how we grew out of certain things, yet those very same things still make us who we are. So when those concepts are brought back once more, it's like you truly allow yourself to be whole again, you truly allow yourself to be free. And it's just, this series is so magnificent, bro. And its connection to music, and I'll never forget when I finished 20th Century Boys for the first time. I went on YouTube.
One option is Guitar Center on US Highway 98 North. Do you want that one?
Yo, hey man, listen, friend, relax. Relax, friend.
Sorry.
Your friend is out here trying to take over, you feel me? Friend is out here trying to take over. But listen to me, coach. See, I lost my train of thought. See, this is what I'm saying. This is exactly what I'm saying, man. This is why 20th Century Boys is so incredible to me. Because you literally could have an organization based off of the concept of voice technology really become something that a lot of people treat as a friend type of figure. I mean, that is a realistic possibility, ladies and gentlemen. And I think that's what makes the series so special, is because it hits so close to home. It hits so close to so many different things that we could see, and so many different possibilities that could actually happen. That truly makes it terrifying. And I feel like that's something that Urasawa is really good at, and I feel like that's why his stories, no matter if they carry the same type of beats, they'll always work. Why? Because it's those same beats, and because he relates so much to humans and how they truly are. And the very intense moments and situations that we encounter in our day-to-day lives, he just capitalizes on that and actually makes stories out of them. And of course makes it into massive, magnificent tales, but at the very core, that's exactly what they are. And 20th Century Boys, to me, I just, every single time somebody asks me, like, why should I invest my time into this series? Because it is quite a number of chapters. I always tell them it's the most unique world domination plot that I've ever experienced. Because there's a lot of world domination plots out there, and there's a lot of villains that wish for world domination. But in this particular case, there's a character that succeeded in that very world domination through an idea and a concept. And it's through that very same idea and concept that friends were able to come together through several different timelines, or several different time periods, and come to take on this very same foe. And it's just, I don't know, man. It'll always have a special place in my heart. I absolutely adore the characters of Kenji and Kana. Kana in particular, like I said, because I think it's because we spent such a long time in the 2014 portion of the story. But that entire story arc, seeing how she was dealing with so many of the situations that she was going through, and you truly get to see her grow into her own as the story progresses. And that's why I'm really looking forward to giving it that reread, because all I'm going off of is just remembering the feelings of how I felt while initially going through it. And I need to go back and actually like 100% think, like, especially after all the series I've read since my last reread, I might be able to have a different perspective on why it is that this series is so genius and magnificent. But I really wanted to talk about those sections and of the story or of 20th Century Boys in particular, because I feel like it's those main three things, along with its characters, that really make this series stick out to me. And that is, once again, the Hanged Hill, which that's an experience I'll never forget. The concept of friend, the very idea of friend, and the story being told and the mystery being unraveled through two different time periods, where, because enough room was put in between that, so many different possibilities can evolve out of that. So many different storytelling possibilities, I mean. But like having an exciting character return from back then, like Ocho, like Ocho's that dude, son. But having, a character return like that, and seeing how much certain things have changed that character, seeing how certain clues left behind back then that they can search up will lead into the mystery that's currently going down right now, and just the way it unravels from there, it's so genius to me, because it's like it's one of those stories that really rewards you for being with it for the long journey that you're on. And it's so immersive and addicting that once you start it, at least for me, it was just so hard to put down, and I didn't put it down, man. It was nonstop. Every moment I had, 20th Century Boys, 20th Century Boys, 20th Century Boys, and it's an experience I'll never forget, and I'm truly grateful for the fact that I was able to go through it, man. But that'll be it for this edition of the 25 Days of Santa Recon, man. I'm so glad that I was able to just sit down. Like, it feels so good, but to get this all off my chest, man. Because usually whenever we're talking about 20th Century Boys, it's like very limited. I never want to spoil anybody on the series, so I try not to talk about it in depth on streams. But God, man. And then on my top list, that's the most in detail that I ever gone through for this. But I'm so glad I was able to just sit down and get that off my chest, man, because I adore this series. I really love this manga, and it's a real shame that it does not have an anime adaptation. 20th Century Boys, to me, if it is done by a good studio, could end up being a classic in the same way that it is in its animated or in its manga form. It just needs the right direction. 20th Century Boys, I think, would end up being one of the greatest anime of all time if you get the right soundtrack, the right directors to give it those really good storyboards and the great visual direction, and then if you get a cast that fits the main cast of the series, you have a banger on your hands, man. I mean, the story is already there. The story is there. Madhouse showed us what a Naoki Urasawa adaptation could be like in Monster. I read Monster, and I've watched my favorite scenes in Monster, and when I watch those scenes, it's as if I was reading it for the first time. I mean, absolutely, they did such a magnificent job with Monster in its anime form that I just wish the 20th Century Boys could have some sort of adaptation out there, man. But I guess it's because it stayed to its manga medium up until this point in time that it is this underrated gem of sorts. Even though it's not really underrated, people who experience it really, really like it. But it's like one of those masterpieces that you hear and people respect and recognize, but I feel like not enough people have given it a shot. And I feel like if it ever got an anime, more eyes would be on the product, which would lead to much more people gaining this experience of 20th Century Boys, man. But aside from that, man, I hope everybody has an awesome sense of a day, man. Take care. We finally got to talk about it, bro. The 20th Century Boys greatness, man. Feels so good, dude. But I'll see y'all next time. Once again, yo, let me tell y'all something, man. Y'all think I'm playing, man. Hanged Hill, son. You see how it's nighttime right now? We're not talking about 20th Century Boys, and I remember how I felt that night. You don't want to feel that, man. You don't want to feel that, so I just was paranoid to the max. To the max. I need to capitalize those feelings and make a game of myself. Flipping Flagnar's video. He really had me spooked after reading that arc, man.